Amna, do you want us to join the YouTube link? Is that better for you?
Both are okay, Kirti. Either one is fine.
So are you playing anything now?
We're starting. Amrita's dropped out. I'll just play my PPT.
She's made me the host. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm just starting my PPT. You see my screen? Hello and welcome everyone to this wonderful session of Digital Adda. The topic for today is skills standardization the answer to improving employability? Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji said earlier this year that the framework for digital skills needs to be strengthened for meeting the industry demands and creating a strong industry skills linkage. In our earlier Digital Adda sessions, talent acquisition leaders across the board have requested for a skills framework which would help them identify the right skilled candidates. While organizations are struggling with hiring the right skilled talent, imperative to ensure business growth for any enterprise, employment seekers are trying to figure out which skills are in demand. Would templatized job descriptions, competency standards help both job seekers and job providers? Let's get into the digital Adda and welcome our panelists who have come together to share their views. We welcome Nalini Krishnan, Head Sourcing and Competency Management for the Salesforce practice in TCS within the Enterprise Growth Group. Banraj Thambi, Delivery Head Talent Transformation Wipro Limited. Venkatraman Umakant, Vice President and Head Analytics and IT V Technologies. Indira Priyadarshini, Senior Consultant with Drop. And our moderator for the session, Sridevi Sira, Lead Future Skills Academia, SSC NASSCOM. Over to you, Sridevi.
Well, thank you so much, Kamna, for setting up that stage for all of us to iterate and talk right now. While skills is so important and digital skills is something that all of us are talking and hearing day in and day out, I think it's become increasingly challenging for people to understand what actually does it take for an individual to get a job. And reading through so many job descriptions, I think it's sometimes too confusing for people. What exactly can we do in terms of templatizing all these skills, and so that everybody gets what they really need to look for when they are actually checking out for their jobs? I think that's one of the very, very important questions that most people do ask, whether they're experienced, whether they are freshers right now. I'm sure all of us accept that this is one of the most critical job that all the HR heads also do, in terms of figuring out what does it take to get the right skill into us. So let's just start discussing. I mean, what does it take? I mean, what exactly one needs to do when they're looking out for these kind of job descriptions, which are so varied, in place. Nalini?
Nalini, you're on mute.
Yeah, thanks, Sridevi. I think you rightly captured some of the dilemma that we are going through today, right? Just as much as the technology landscape has changed in the last decade and very, very fast, I think the business is also changing. The demands of clients are also changing. So I think today it's no longer about knowing a particular hard skill and then you have a job description that kind of fits your skill and you say I'm good at a particular technology and you get hired, right? We've come far, far away from that kind of a basic need, and I think that's all the more a reason that we need more standardization today than we've ever had in the past, right? Today, everybody recognizes, especially with the digital revolution, that talent can come from anywhere, innovation can come from anywhere, and it's no longer leadership with authority. It's more leadership by influence, leadership by thought leadership. With that kind of demand at every level of the roles that we recruit for, I think companies, like you rightly said, are struggling to get the right talent. And at the same time, we see that there is a lot of interest in associates, in students, in the job market out there with a lot of skills. So I see a good demand, I see a great demand, and I see a very good supply. Again, talking from the Indian ecosystem perspective, because we've always been very good at upskilling ourselves. We've always been good at adapting new technologies and open source and what have you. But I think standardization, in my mind, could be that bridge which can kind of tie this demand and supply, both of which is kind of overflowing. I think that would be my initial take on why we need standardization so bad. It's a common language, and without communication, things are going to be a mess. Things are going to be misinterpreted. So to me, standardization of job roles is really a need for the hour. We have to keep pace with the way technology and the roles are evolving with respect to what our customers are expecting, right? It's no longer a task-based role that we have in the industry, right? Everybody is looking at what more are you doing for the customer than probably what is there in the project specification. And that's also where we need to package our standardization of roles in a way that it has a wholesome combination of a particular hard skill, the soft skills that go with it, a lot of governance and ethics, I think, can be packaged into standardization if we do it right, So this is a very interesting space that we are, and I'm hoping NASSCOM and Future Skills can lay the foundation for the next decade of digitization, Sridevi.
So, having heard you, I think it's very important for us to understand what does it take to create a standard, how these standards are going to be created. And I think, Indira, you can chime in over here and help us understand what is this process all about and how does this happen?
Yeah, thanks, Sridevi, for the opportunity to participate. Standardization is the need of the hour, as rightly pointed out by you and Nalini in the beginning. Especially after COVID, we've seen a lot of transformation happening in companies and in different spheres within the organization, be it technology related or hiring. Everywhere there's a lot of confusion as to what are the relevant job roles for the company within the organization and how suitable candidates can be hired. So as part of creating job standards, what we are doing is with the aim of creating a common lexicon for all the stakeholders involved in the hiring process, which is companies, educators who are training the students, as well as job seekers. We are interacting with various subject matter experts within the industry. So there's this initiative called Future Skills, which everyone of you is aware of. We have identified 10 emerging technologies, and for them, for each technology, we interacted with about 30 subject matter experts in each technology area, like AI, big data, cyber security, cloud computing, and several other emerging technologies we identified. And we conduct various meetings with them. We call them work groups. And in the work group, we do a lot of brainstorming. We take ideas from all the subject matter experts. And these experts come from companies of various sizes. So you see the requirements for a large company is different compared to the requirements of a small startup kind of a company. So we have representatives from all these companies who exchange their ideas. And then finally, we come up with a set of job standards. By job standards, we mean all the top job roles that are in demand, the activities that should be performed within the job role, and what are the skills that are required to perform the job role. We identify all these aspects, compile them, and get a consensus from the subject matter experts. And once we get the consensus, we take it to the government for approval and then circulate it within our ecosystem partners for their adoption.
That's interesting. I mean, there's a hell of a work which goes behind in terms of creating a standard, I guess. Now, I just want to understand, does every company have a different way to look at these so-called skills and the way you want to evaluate? I think, feel free, Vanraj, Venkat, all of you to chime in over here to say, what is your organization doing as far as, these standards are concerned, and, what is your take on this?
First, I'll give my observations based on my experience from the work groups. So when it comes to large organizations like TCS, Wipro and all, they're quite big players, they're quite experienced, so they have all the systems in place. But when it comes to small companies and medium-scale companies, they are really confused as to how, how to hire the right talent. And in fact, some companies even don't have a clear definition for the job role itself. So that is where, and when it comes to AR, VR, which are still, a lot of research is still going on, and they haven't reached that level of maturity in terms of adoption. Standards are really helpful for companies, to scale their businesses also.
That's good. That's interesting.
Sridevi, as Indra mentioned, right? So most of the companies are having it as such, at least the scale of Wipro and TCS. See, in Wipro, we have a proper such standard that we follow. So for any new technologies, probably emerging, not only emerging technology, technology that we may have to plan for next 5 years, 6 years, right, which is going to come. So that's the first thing we do as such, right? Because that is the first, once we set up what is required for that, right? The customer can come anytime. If you look at the level of digital transformation is happening, right? In fact, every month, every day, probably, right, you come across new, you hear about new skills, new technologies as such. So, see, we have a proper, this one where we have our own standards in place for each technologies. In fact, that includes from all job roles, actually. That covers all job roles from developer to architect, consultant, across technology. The way now currently NOS standards are there, right? Similar to that itself, we also have it. So where we have each job role, what all is required, what competency, what proficiency level it is required for each expertise, what are the standards that needs to be followed, what is the minimum criteria, what knowledge is required, what a mandatory skill they need to have. So all that we have it actually from our side, so which we follow strictly, in fact. So that will help individual employees to grow, right, within the company, and they can understand where the next level, next 2 years, where they want to go, right, as part of the organization, within the organization, in fact. So that we follow. Yeah, other than that, if you see, right, Wipro, we work partner with NASSCOM on the Future Skill initiative, right, for the students, fresher students. For that also, we strictly follow the NOS guidelines, right, which NASSCOM has come with this guideline with. So that's the one which we follow strictly from course content to the till this certification process, right? So everything been closely associated with NOS and NASSCOM. So that we encourage colleges and we will drive this within colleges, so that they can, unless they don't do that, students will, it will be difficult to students to find a job, actually. So we drive that also as part of a CSR initiative, which is Talent Next and Future Skills. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. So if I can go next, just to sort of completely agree with what Nalini, Indra, and Vandaj mentioned about the need for the standardization, right? So I don't think anybody has a doubt that there is a need. But when we talk about templatization or standardization, there is only to a certain extent that you can standardize, because you need to have the agility also, right? It can't be so rigid that it sort of makes it as this is what a particular job role is all about. And I think that is one important thing, because I would sort of bring in my experience of being on the other side with larger organizations, being with NASSCOM and now with a mid-sized organization as well. Like, while as Nalini and Vandaj mentioned, with larger organizations, yes, they do have standards in place, right? But the technology is also evolving at a very rapid pace. And if you look at large organizations, at least from my experience, what I've seen is even across the different business units, the way they define a job role is quite different. It's not standard. Now, I have seen a lot of cases where just a guy who understands Python, they claim them to be a data scientist. That necessarily need not be the case, right? So what we can do is we can, even if we have a standardization, the kind of thing that we have here, we could use it to build our job description, right? That could be a starting point, so that at least there is a common understanding. I think Nalini used the right word, a common language, right? So people understand that. And since I talked about this agility as well, that is where I want to tie this up. See, if you're talking about standardization, yes, you could say a data scientist, this is what is expected to do. Or say a cloud specialist, a cloud architect, this is what is supposed to do. But as I said, the technology is evolving. Like if you take RPA an example, right? RPA started off with simple automation. We call it as bot. Now today, it is sort of enhanced with the capabilities of AI. We also call it as cognitive bots. Now, when these things come up, you need that flexibility. And I think that's something which I think Future Skills and NASSCOM has done a fabulous job in terms of making it more modular in nature, right? So for people on the call, you have this QP and NOS. QP is typically a job role, and NOS is more at a competency level. So the advantage that we have here is you can actually pick and choose. While there is a role today for, say, an RPA a bot creation guy. Now, tomorrow, if there is an inclusion of AI into it, I can pick up the relevant competencies from the AI, the analytics piece as well, and plug into it. I think that's something which really helps. And this is something which will be relevant for the large organizations as well, right? So, because each one of the organizations have their own strength. They might be good at one area, and over a period of time, they might venture into other areas. For example, I think somebody mentioned about AR, VR. It's something which is still emerging. Now, when you want to get into newer areas, instead of sort of reinventing the wheel, you can sort of adopt what has already been done. And I always believe that the sum of the parts is actually greater than the whole, right? So when we have so many people who've got together and built this, obviously there is a lot more thought gone into it rather than just one particular organization focused on that. So I think that's one use case where people can leverage it as far as large organizations are concerned. And as far as mid-sized organizations, something where I'm part of right now, is we are still building practices in certain areas, right? So now as we build practices on AI, ML, I've actually looked into the things that have worked that has already happened. And I would definitely want to use that as a starting point instead of reinventing the wheel, right? So for mid-sized organization or small organization, this would be an even better thing because they may not have the wherewithal or the I would say the human capital to really invest so much of time to build something from scratch. So I think that's something which would definitely help. So those are my initial takes on why standardization is required. And yes, standardization with agility as well, or flexibility.
That's really brilliant. That takes me to the next one. All of you use this word called competency. And that happens to be one of the very, very important terms that we keep hearing on and off. When we talk about standardization, when we talk about competency, what does it drive home? Does it take care of quality? Does it take care of something else? I want to hear your thoughts on what does standardization really reflect on when an organization is actually proceeding in this direction. Feel free, anyone. Nalini, you're on mute.
Yeah, Sridevi, I'll go first if that's okay, because this is a beautiful segue, right? Venkat mentioned how standards is important for all sizes of companies with a different benefit, with a different takeaway, right? If you're a small or mid-sized company, then you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You have a ready-made starting platform for you. For larger organizations, again, it's about agility, like he said, and it's also about evolving, okay? And to bring in the competency aspect, Sridevi, see, when you say standard job roles, predictability about how somebody can acquire a certain skills and become employable, that is a very basic takeaway from standardization. That apart, the way everyone is looking at their career is also changing with the digital and technology and business landscape, right? So when you come to competency, right, standardization helps you define competency levels, which gives a person who is looking at an employer not as a job that will get them a certain project or compensation or whatever. They are able to look at it as a long-term career in terms of how they can get into an organization, perform, and grow continuously, right? I think that's where competency comes into picture, because with competencies and standardization as a framework, you can define what is a basic minimum skill expected on a project to make you a successful professional. And it can open a lot of electives in terms of specialization, in terms of even generalization, in terms of consultancy skills, in terms of solutioning skills, right? So all these can be electives that are available to any professional as a part of the standardization. So you are defining a standard framework, and yet you are making it flexible for somebody, not to rigidly box them into only something that they can do and nothing beyond. You're also kind of opening up a long-term career framework where somebody today can aspire to come in as a fresher, as a college grad, and they have various options within the competency framework available to them to pick and choose skills and aspire to be maybe an enterprise architect in the next 10 years, right? So I think that's where the competency factor comes in. This is something that TCS has always believed in. We've prided ourselves with our ability to train people and retrain people, and everybody is very focused on learning, unlearning, changing their streams and parallelly moving roles, right? So if I have somebody who is a Java architect today, I have a competency and a standardization framework. It's very easy for me to then tell the person that, okay, you've done a decade in Java, you know everything that is out there in .NET or Java. If you today want to move to a Salesforce, for example, you don't have to start from scratch. You can get into a fast track of a certain standard competency framework that we have, and you can become a cloud architect, or whatever it is that they aspire to be. So I think that's where the competency factor comes into standardization and gives it a little bit of a flexibility.
So, Sridhari, see, competency okay, actually is the minimum requirement, right, for a candidate to perform certain tasks, certain activities. Okay, so that's what we define it as, right? So usually when you a company to company, it differs as such, right? For me, for Wipro, it may be different. TCS, it may be different because if now example as Venkat mentioned about AI, right? Yeah, AI skills. Because some of the times we get candidate, okay, I have Python experience, so I have good understanding of AI. That's what they think. But for us, it may not be the thing actually, because we want probably people with ML, right? We want ML ops actually. So for us, ML ops is required, and we want proper full stack ML engineer actually, right? So the expectation keeps on, it changes from company to company, right? And so ultimately, what task he can do actually, activity that he can do. So that's how it should be. It is defined, in fact. Now, individual is, unless we don't have these standards, right? Because there won't be a universal, probably as Indra, Nalini, everyone mentioned. We want a standard similar to telecom standard, right?
Seem to
Lose Vadraj?
seem to be a technical snag at his end.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, please take over.
So, Indra, you want to go next, or?
Yes, so I'll add to the points that Vanraj was mentioning. The level of competency requirements for different companies is different. But when we are developing our standards for NASSCOM, what we are ensuring is we're keeping it open-ended, we're keeping it broad so that people can plug and play based on their organizational requirements. And as we realize that the technologies we are dealing with in future skills are evolving really fast. So how AI was 2 years back when we started developing standards for AI is not the same now. A lot has happened, a lot of technological innovations has happened within AI. So we're keeping it open-ended so that, it gives a broad framework for companies to customize it as per their requirements. So if standards are defined in such a way that, it helps the companies to customize it based on their requirements, I think it solves a lot of problems related to the clarity about the job roles and the skills that are required.
So this kind of, the skills framework, so that we are talking about over here, is it available for all technologies, or is it available for certain technologies? How do
right now we did it for 10 technologies, Sridevi. So we started with AI, and then we moved on to cybersecurity, IoT, cloud computing, digital marketing, RPA, 3D printing, AR, VR, and blockchain. But of late, we realized that there are more technologies that are emerging, like, metaverse, Web 3.0, and low code, no code. and many other things. These are the buzzwords that we hear these days. So we are extending our standards development process to those areas as well. We will soon be coming up with standards related to all these areas.
So adding on to what folks already mentioned about this, right? So competency, as we all mentioned, it's about the kind of skills that are required for an individual to really perform a particular role, right? And the way I see this is with the way technology is changing and the roles as well, right? So I can't even recollect the kind of transitions I've done over the last 2+ decades, right? So I've been in web development, then I was in mainframe for a long time. And then right now, the team that I manage, we have RPA, AI, ML, and so on and so forth, right? Now, when you do this career transition, irrespective of the size of the organization, there is always a confusion, right? So what does it take to become a data scientist? What does it take to become a data engineer, right? Now, people look at it as separate career path. They think, okay, if I become a data engineering role, probably I cannot transition to a data scientist. It's actually a myth, right? So if you're started as a data engineer, because you're on the ground, you're working with the data, you know what kind of data is they require. Because what AI produces or ML produces, it all depends on the data. If the data in is junk, the output is also going to be junk. So this actually helps understand, okay, if I'm playing the role of data engineer, I know these are the kind of competencies that are required. If I aspire to become a data scientist over a period of time, what is the delta skill that I need to acquire to really get to that level? I think that is another area where this kind of a matrix thing really helps. And especially, as I said, it doesn't really matter on the size of the organization because people are confused, right? So I have been in large organizations like IBM where there is no dearth of information. There is so much information. This is a typical scenario. What happens when we open a Amazon or a Netflix, right? You keep browsing for half an hour, then you're tired, and then you come out. So that's kind of a thing happens. So something like this would definitely help. One thing that I feel we could do better is also in terms of promotion of these things. How do you spread the awareness that this is available, be it a student or a working professional? This is something that I can use it as a reference. So you want to build a career on data science or a data engineer, what is the kind of skills that are required? And it's not necessarily only the technical skills, right? There are other aspects to it as well, which is much more important. For example, it's a problem definition, right? Or problem solving and all of that. So what are the skills that are required for somebody to get in there? I think that clarity would definitely help. And in my current organization, I have people, because of the size of the organization as well. There are people who have started their career in web technologies. Then today they're heading the practices for RPA, right? So they have gone through the struggle, they've learned on their own. But something like this, if they have it as a reference, it would make their life much more easier for them as well as the organization. You're on mute, Sridhari.
That's like a very brilliant point that you brought, to the table. It's just not about jobs per se. If somebody is, more focused, and that naturally should be the case. If they're interested in careers, then they must be bothered about the career progression. And at every level, it calls for a different skill. And thereby, person needs to enhance their skills. That's something that I'm deriving out of whatever all of you have said. Having said this, and you also highlighted one point, how do we make it more popular? How do we ensure that everybody understands that this is the mechanism that organizations are actually adopting, and how do they embrace themselves to match the pace of the organizations? What is your strategies in terms of checking the talent for your own self? I mean, what are the processes that you put in place? What are the things that you check for when you are initially hiring the resources?
So Sridevi, just one clarification. When you said initially hiring resources, are we talking about freshers or laterals?
I'm talking about 0 to 3 years kind of.
Okay. See, when you look at 0 to 3 years, when we hire freshers, it's more about 2 A's, I would say. It's the aptitude and the attitude. And I would put the attitude first and then the aptitude, because if the attitude is good, I think we can train the person. So that's something which we really look for. And we do some amount of test on the problem solving ability as well. As part of V Technologies, we also have a sister concern called Hire Me, which is an assessment engine. So we use that to really, and we ask the students to go through that. And there are some 7 different parameters on that, including communications, the domain skills and all of that. And depending on what kind of a role we're looking for, we sort of give weightage to those parameters and evaluate them. So that's what we do for a fresher. But when you talk about lateral, it's more about the practical experience that they have. What we have seen, I think everybody faces that problem, is it's very easy to get a theoretical answer, but it's the practical where they have a problem, right? So if you ask them to write 10 lines of code, they struggle. But if you ask a theoretical question, they can, because there are so much of question bank available. They can even Google about what Wipro is going to ask or TCS is going to ask, and they probably might clear it. But I think it's a practical application, which is important. So we do have coding platform as well, where we ask students to sort of give a problem and ask them to see. It's more about the approach. It's not much less about the syntax, but more about the approach. And with what Indra also mentioned about the low code, no code, and all of that, slowly it's like the users themselves can build their own code, right? So you don't need to have the technical thing, but if your approach and the problem solving ability is good, you can do that. So that's what we look for when we really hire, be it at a fresher or lateral thing as well.
That takes me to the next question. I was actually thinking, where is it that you guys hunt for your talent? Where do you find this talent? And I know I should not be asking how do you actually filter out and take the best of the best, but where exactly do you guys hunt for your skills or hunt for your people?
So, Sridevi, actually, there are two areas that we can look into, right? If you refer to the latest NASSCOM report, around 5.1 million, right, industry tech talent. Out of that, around 1.6 million are digital skill talent, actually. So that means we have 3 million talent, which they don't have digital skill as such, right? So this is one of the options actually for us, actually, not all the companies, in fact, industry, right? So this, they can be, in fact, through future skill itself, they can be reskilled, upskilled. In fact, these talents are the talent whom we can, as an individual, so my company, right? Within my company also, we have such talents, right? It's because this 3 million is part of overall industry. So this, we call it as a core talent group. Really, they are core talent, now the digital talent, right? So this core talent, we can train them, reskill, upskill on digital technology, because that will help them in career growth, as well as help in mobility within the organization, because the different departments, like large scale like us, we have different departments who need similar skills that will help them actually. So that is one of the channels through which we can do. The second which we are doing is from university itself, right? Where you tie up with the university, help the university, in fact, in emerging technologies itself as such. Because if you compare to the talent that is required, right, the demand, but the supply is not that much. In fact, if I give AI/ML itself, almost 50% we don't have actually, right? As we are not able to fulfill actually. Right. So these are the talent which what we work with the universities as such, and now our area, right? CSR talent is CSR area, through which we provide NASSCOM Future Skill itself, one of the things that we provide, platform that we provide. Similar to this, we ourselves train them in other areas actually, like Java, Python, where we train professors actually, intern train the students as. So these students, in fact, once they graduate, right, so they will be having that skill. So ultimately for us, it's a day one, right? Day one, we can put them in project actually. So we need not spend time in having them in the company, then spend 2-3 months. So that talent, we can use it actually. So these are two channels through which we can definitely, get it, in fact, across industries. You're on mute.
Nalini, what would you like to tell the universities and the colleges? What should they do and how should they come up the ladder?
Yeah. So, Sridevi, one thing is, again, looking for talent, right? We have to admit all of us are looking at the same pool here when it comes to India, at least. It's the same market. We have the same challenges. Of course, yeah, each of us have done whatever we could in our capability. TCS has democratized the entire selection process, at least for students in terms of NQT. Everybody knows that is a standard process to enter into an employment with TCS. But that said, Sridevi, I think platforms like Future Skills Prime and the standardization topic we are talking today, they can ease a lot of pain that we are facing. How? Because with standards, if you have a definition of what are the different types of roles that you can aspire to get into, and if there is a corresponding curricula that is made available, then platforms like Future Skills Prime, any other company that is into training and development, can take up bits and pieces of incorporating those standards and bringing students and experienced professionals in the market to a certain level of competency, to a certain fitment of different roles that are out there, right? Then it becomes easier for us to pick up from that pool. And like Vanraj said, we have to worry less about, again, grooming them after they come on board and making them successful, right? So I think there is a huge opportunity there in terms of collaboration with a lot of L&D firms. If the standards are in place, then we can get into a little bit more predictable, talent grooming, if I can call it that, for lack of any better word. And that predictability, I think, will translate into employment. That predictability will translate into successful careers for these professionals, because there is no ambiguity, right? Even if it is probably reduced from 80% to maybe 20%. They know what kind of roles they are getting into. They know what is expected of them. So there's a very focused effort, and everybody is happy. You're not spending energies grooming and re-grooming the same people for the same skills, for the same projects, just because they belong to different organizations.
That interestingly actually puts the conversation into a different perspective. We are all talking about standardization. We're all talking about how they will be hired and they'll be, nurtured within the organizations. But can we do one thing, in terms of nurturing them while they are still within the college ecosystem, in terms of taking these standard aligned courses, like, the NSQF aligned courses that we, actually talk about heavily? Will that really help in terms of getting this into the college syllabi, so that by the time they hit the final year or maybe the pre-final year where the campus recruitments actually start, will it really help the industry, as an entirety, if they come with these, skills?
Sure, I believe NASSCOM plays a critical role here, actually. Right. What I feel is, I agree with you. Actually, we need to do it. In fact, this has to be driven in university level with all the universities. In fact, if you see tier 3 areas also, you need to cover, right? Because this is critical. In fact, if everyone follow, because if you look at the certification that students get, right, and all companies. Okay, if you're certified from one university, or probably I'm talking from future skill perspective, right? Similar like future skills, where you cover overall NOS standard, right? So such certification, any university, from any university, the student is that there is a validity, right? People prefer such candidates. So in fact, I believe this is where NASSCOM should clearly work with the level university. In fact, instead of NASSCOM, university should work with NASSCOM and industry body and government, right? They should work closely together and ensure that students are getting or leveraging this opportunity, right? It can be in individual institute also, they can do it. In fact, they can, yes, because not only curriculum, normal curriculum, right? Either they bring it as part of your curriculum or as an elective additional as such, so that student can gain knowledge on futuristic technologies, right? Because ultimately, when you go for interview, if you have good emerging technologies knowledge or experience, you are sure to get employability there, right? So ultimately, students look from that angle, and they should look from that angle also. So they need to put extra effort to gain knowledge in this area. So we need to do this and bring it in, what you call, include this as part of university and institutions, definitely.
I think, Indira, if you can add, what is it that your experience has been, because you've been talking to, various organizations in terms of framing these standards. How open are they in terms of creating all of this and making it more popular? I mean, making the entire world know that something like this is coming up. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so Sridevi, awareness is definitely needed in terms of, that we are creating the standards and that companies can adopt. But the companies that we already interacted with, they are thrilled to know that we are developing these standards because it makes their life so much simpler when it comes to hiring and reskilling their employees to, bring them to roles that are really in demand. So companies can benefit, and I would like to add some points to what Vanraj had said regarding taking our standards to the universities as well. Because in universities, what happens is the curriculum is mostly redundant. I'm sorry to say this, but yeah, the curriculum has been framed a long time back, and it doesn't cope with the changing technological scenario. So people need to upgrade themselves. Students need to upgrade their skills before they enter the job market, and that is where the standards that we develop in future skills can help the students. Yeah, so I think we need to do some brainstorming as to how we can popularize our job standards better, so that the reach is more.
That's actually good. And yeah, Venkat, what do you think on this topic?
Yeah, so on the academia piece, what Indra mentioned, right? Yes, this would certainly help the universities if they're included, because from an organizational business perspective, it's more about the window between, say, hiring and billability is something which is very critical, right? So everybody wants to lower that. And if they are pre-trained on that, the sooner they can actually become productive, I think it's going to help the organizations, and everybody's striving towards that. Now, one of the point that Indra mentioned is about the university thing, right? The curriculum that they have is sort of outdated and all of that. One thing that I've noticed with, I think, consciously universities have to work on is they're always looking towards addition of things, right? So, for example, if they find this particular curriculum or not good, they said, okay, let's put in as an elective. But seldom they look about what needs to be knocked out of the syllabus. I think that's also important because otherwise, from a student perspective, there's too much that is overloaded to them and it becomes difficult, right? So you need to really learn what is required. There are things which are been there for the last 50 years. So we what? So if not required anymore, we need to get rid of that and add the relevant thing. So that's one important thing. And as far as the hiring thing is concerned, Shridevi, the short answer is when you said, where all do you hire from? I think the short answer is where not. So today's scenario is such that anywhere that you can really find a talent. In fact, yesterday we had a good conversation. We had a candidate who got selected and pretty good at his work. It was later identified that he didn't have a graduation degree. He's just a 12th standard pass. So I took it up to the management and they were supportive. They said, yeah, ultimately what matters is the talent, right? So that's the way things are moving towards. Yes, with some of the large organizations, it might be a little difficult to bring about these changes, but that's the flexibility that we have with mid-sized organizations that just over a conversation, you can get things done. So I think that is one point. And we do have, like, for example, our group, like We Technology, is part of a larger group called the SONA Group, and we have our own institution as well. So as far as freshers are concerned, we definitely hire from that college and through the Hire Me platform as well. And the Hire Me is, again, intended towards identifying those rare gems from the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, right? Where maybe not all the biggies are going, but there are good talent available. So that's a platform that we use for hiring freshers as well. But beyond that, when we talk about lateral, there is no really restrictions. Wherever we can, we sort of tap into that. And this is one area where Future Skills Prime can also help for all the people who are getting skilled on the platform. If there is a way for us to get a visibility in terms of who the candidates for getting skilled, because it's like a chicken and egg, right? The moment people see, okay, there is opportunities or either in terms of career growth or a new job opportunity, if I'm getting it, obviously the traction improves, right? It's a win-win for the entire ecosystem. So I think that would certainly help.
That's correct. Where else do you think, I mean, what else should we be doing so that these standards are more, popularized?
Sridevi, one quick thing I'd like to add.
Please.
Apart from predictability and employability, I think when Indira and Venkat were talking and Vanraj also mentioned about competency, I started thinking standardization can also be a vehicle for corporations driving a very performance driven culture, right? We, at least from TCS, we hire from, like Venkat said, pretty much anywhere and everywhere. Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, wherever you are, we believe that if you have the talent, then you have a place in the organization, and the rest of it, of course, we will support in terms of L&D. So when it comes to standardization and roles, we have to acknowledge the fact that not everyone out there is equally ambitious in terms of their career progression. Somebody might be very happy doing a administrator or a junior developer kind of a role for the first decade of their career, and you might have some people who want to make it to the to the architect level or anything bigger within the first 5 years itself, right? And I think standardization can help here, because you have a curricula, you have a path that they can follow, and you're essentially telling people that this is all the skills that you have. You pick and choose, and you can decide the pace at which your career can grow. I think that is another thing that is missing today. And it causes a lot of employee frustrations. It causes a lot of employee, disengagement, because there's not very much clarity in terms of how your performance is being differentiated and rewarded.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, Sridevi, since you talked about how can we popularize that, I'm sure there'll be a lot of ideas, but something which comes to my mind is, since there is a lack of awareness about what it takes for certain roles, it could be even like, do you know series kind of a thing, right? Where we say it's sort of projected as these are what industry experts are calling, right? This is what industry experts believe, that these are the competencies that are required for somebody to become a data scientist or data engineer or RPA, wherever it is, right? So that awareness building would certainly help for people to really see what it takes. And then obviously the traction moves, okay, where do I go to really acquire those skills? Future Skills Prime could be one of those platforms to really do that. And Sridevi, there is a question that I see on the chat. If you're okay, I can just address that.
Please.
Okay, so there's a guy, R. Srivastava, who's asking, in the present scenario, are IT companies planning to set up their offices in tier 2 cities as a large number of young IT professionals are hired? At least from my organization, I think industry is also moved into that, work from anywhere and work from home and all of that. Yes, we are sort of open to work from home. We've done that. And even your question on the tier 2, tier 3, we believe the talent is available there. So we recently opened our centers in Hyderabad. We've opened up in Trichy. And we have another 8 offices which are planned later this year. So yes, the short answer is organizations are moving where the talent is. So it no longer are the days where they're expecting people to move where the organization is. It's the other way around.
I know that's something which opens up an entire new gamut of discussions. I must say, people are really concerned. And of course, the entire focus is right now in tier 2 and tier 3 locations, and making them more relatable to the industry, because that's where also the talent is lying, and we should definitely be available for that. Thanks so much, Venkat, for picking up that up. I was not observing on the chat. Thank you so much for addressing that. There's one thing that I heard commonly from all of you, that standardization is really important, and you as organization really value that, and within your ecosystem, for various ways and means, you're actually using standardization, and you really value those. And one thing that you've also called out is, yes, if there is a competency and this kind of a skill set which is built up in the university structures, you're open, in terms of engaging with those as well. Let us say, I'm just thinking aloud with all of you. Let's say we create a standard talent pool for each of the technologies which exist in the market today. This may be an open question. Feel free to answer for this. Would you be interested in terms of, giving some importance, some significance to the standard related certificate which an individual is holding in their hand? It can be a fresher, it can be a working professional. Anybody who comes with this competency or a standard related certificate, will they get valued?
So Sridevi, we already started, we are already doing it actually. If you ask me, from at least from freshers perspective, we are doing it big time. future skill certified candidates, we give them opportunity as such because as part of the recruitment drive, we check whether if they have specialization, then we can map it to certain BUs, right? So if they are AIML, then we can plan them in AIML competency team and right. So that we are already doing it, in fact, and I believe that that's the trend going to be, and we will definitely, if you come with this scheme for laterals also, in fact, definitely most of us, right, will be happy to be actually to help. In fact, our team is already working with Drop and your team on the standardization activity, probably for blockchain, in fact, cloud computing, for all that we are doing it. So we know actually the level of standardization activity that you guys are doing, the framework that you have been setting up. So definitely that has a value as such. So we are ready for that.
That's good. Yes, Venkat.
Yeah, just want to add, like what Manraj mentioned, even from Sona College perspective, we probably were the first ones to adopt this QP and NOS-based thing as well. So we have done that, and we definitely try and attract talent from that. And for people who are listening here, I just want to pass on a good kudos to NASSCOM as well as Indra's team as well. Because I have looked into this competency framework, and when I was there on the other side, I had worked with certain organizations in terms of adoption as well. And the feedback that I've got is, while there are a lot of other companies also which does that, the granularity of that, it's significant, right? So they've gone to a good extent in terms of defining those performance metrics as well for each of these competencies, which are seldom missed out. So my submission would be for people to really look into that in detail, what has been already done. I'm sure there's a lot of value in it. And at least for my organization, I'm going to take it forward in terms of AIML and RPA as well as a starting point.
Yeah, Sridevi, I think there is value for any certification, right? Because it gives you a foundation and it tells you that you've invested time in learning a skill and you're doing something about getting employed, right? We always talk about demand. We talk about, where are the jobs? And platforms like Future Skills are actually telling people that the jobs are there. This is what you need. So here is what you can do. And with that, the rest of the things we are hoping will fall into place. So any certification, I think, definitely has its value. It may not be, the be all and end all, and that may not be the only thing that will get you employed or get you a good job. But it's definitely a differentiator with respect to probably someone else who is a fresh graduate and, not doing the necessary upskilling. It puts you out there and gives you a benefit that you are willing to invest in yourself.
That's really so encouraging to hear from all of you that, these standards are really important and you are all set, all game to, give this preferential status to the people who are holding these kind of standards. And you have, actually emphasized the need for, skilling, reskilling and upskilling. And that's something that, we are all living by day at NASSCOM, I should say. And this particular discussion, I'm sure everybody who is hearing us from here would actually stand to benefit. Like even Thompson says, if you stop learning the moment you get fit into a job role, and that means you're actually gambling with your future. And every day is something that you should be learning, and don't get into this gamble. So ensure that your learning skills and your learning curve is all the time up. On that note, I want to hand it back to Kamna. Over to you.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was, wow, absolutely amazing session. Amazing to hear all of you. Competency standards, bringing predictability, helping employability, not only employability, but also career progression. Incredible. Thank you so much. And we can have another session because there are still some questions which we still have in the chat, but we will congregate again another time. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you